George.
Hey, Miss Robin.
Say hi, Greg.
I'm not saying hi.
Greg just left. If you want to just stand right over there.
Oh,
You
okay.
can stand in the shade if you want to in that other door, and we'll just get it rolling out.
Shade's nice. This door?
Yeah.
Okay. There's old Whitey.
Brakes. We ain't got no stinking brakes. Bam!
Hi, Greg.
Expired in 1998, the last registration. 21 years ago.
Oh.
The 67 Mustang was my dad's car, and he passed away this year, about 6 months ago, and so it looks like this car is going to become a project for me and my wife to get on the road. The car that we're going to focus on right now is going to be this 1989 convertible Foxbody Mustang. I got this car as a one-owner car almost 30 years ago. How crazy is that? I got my very first 5.0 Mustang, a 1987 maroon 5.0 5-speed manual transmission in February of 1993. And drove that car for a couple of years, had a nasty little accident, but I fixed it with my own money and kept driving it. I didn't want to do an insurance claim on it, and neither did my dad, but I can definitely say I learned to drive in that car. As a guy who's only a little over a year away from turning 50 years old and looking back, I can't help but see this car and be reminded of my father, who passed away this year. When my dad helped me buy this car, it was 5 years old, and they were asking $4,250 for it. My dad loved to play mind games with people, and this car provided a wonderful opportunity for him to mess with my own mind. He told me there was no way I was getting the car. Then he told me it was already sold when he finally checked into it. I will never forget the day when I drove by his office, and there, in the back of his shop, in the little shaded area, I could see the reflection of the sun glaring off those beautiful LX taillight lenses. Little did my dad have any clue that this car would set a chain reaction of burning tires that would last a lifetime. My 87 helped prepare me for what was to come with the 89. This particular car wound up with a 12-pound VORTECH S-Trim supercharger, which I would love to have that set up again just to kind of have that old 90s vibe with this car. My desire to make it a full all-out dragster kind of gone the way of the cuckoo bird. But I do want to rebuild this thing. I want to keep it very 90s. I'd love to do like 90s stereo equipment and just keep that vibe. When I rebuild this car, I'm thinking of going with the larger 17-inch pony rims and paint them to match the car. So everything will be decked out in white. It's hard to believe it's been about 25 years since I pulled the engine out of this car, and my intention was to build I always wanted a twin turbo 5.0 Foxbody, and wound up going to college, coming back here, built a 79 Corvette. Gotta love the 90s flair with the Celine style wing on it. And also have a Cobra rear bumper. I sold the cowl hood off this car, but I want to get a Cervini Stalker hood and front end for this thing. With the Cobra styled tail lights, I was able to paint more white on this car than you could ever imagine. So The paint and body guys wouldn't tape them off, but they said if I would do it, they would paint it. So I taped these taillights off, and they shot them with the rest of the car. Still in fashion of Celine, I guess you can say I really always loved the white rims. Since my other American racing wheels that match the back wheels on this car got jacked so many years ago by the meth heads, I think I want to go ahead with some 17-inch pony rims, paint them white, and upgrade to a 5-lug 4-wheel disc brake setup on this car. Definitely would be a good choice. So I'll show you some footage that I took the other day from my cell phone. Not the best quality being an old iPhone S6, but better than nothing. But before we get into the VHS cassette footage from 1994 showing my car when it was bone stock, we're going to take just a quick moment and glance at my buddy Dan's little LX 5.0 that after a massive West Texas hailstorm came out of the body shop looking just a little bit different here. My hopes for this car are to order some parts very soon, starting out with the UPR front cross member, and I can't decide what direction I want to go with for the springs and the shocks, but I definitely want to go through and do a 5-lug conversion with 4-wheel disc brakes on this car. For the engine in this car, I want to keep it old school pushrod V8 with either a VORTECH S trim, noisy, gear-driven supercharger, or perhaps something like a Ken Bell or another Root-style blower on it. One of my goals with this car is to keep it a true driver's car. It originally had a manual T5 transmission in it, which I sold off all the parts for years ago, intending to build a race-prepped C4 transmission, which I did. I've changed my mind, and I definitely want to go back and source a T5 or T5.6 for my rebuild on this car. One of the things about the '89 Mustangs is that they had no ABS, no traction control, no airbags. So in a true sense, these were very much elemental driver's cars. The biggest flaw that this car came with when I bought it, with only about 47,000 miles on it, was that the lady who owned it before me was a very heavy smoker, and it smelled like the Marlboro Man camped out in the back seat or slept in it every night. If I'm not mistaken, this particular car now only has just over 70,000 miles on the chassis and motor. One of the first modifications I ever did to this car was put the ever popular white face gauge kit in this car. I used a Ford Motorsport 160 mile an hour speedometer versus the normal 140 that was the most common replacement. And then from a company called NR Industries or something along those lines, they made a white-faced dial kit for that 160 mile an hour speedometer and the rest of the gauges. So that's what's currently on the car. One of the things I would love to find and that I intend on keeping is the odometer gauge cluster that sits to the side of the pod. It houses a 5-inch Ford Racing gauge, tachometer gauge. But the one thing I never got back in the day was the white-faced Ford Racing gauges to match. So if anybody has some out there, please feel free to throw me a line. I will gladly take some of those off your hands, whether they're boost gauges, fuel pressure gauge. Let me know. You can see this particular Mustang went through several different transformations through the years. I originally had the center lines from my maroon Mustang on this car, and I eventually sold those off in favor of going with more of a Celine styled look, and with the white 5 stars kind of took over. But yeah, this is how I had the car set up when I was a little 19-year-old twerp with a long T5 shifter before the Hurst short shifters got put on. In closing, I'll just take a moment to say, time flies. If you've got an old project sitting around that has any kind of sentimental value, and you have the ability financially to work on it, do it. Prices go up, times change, parts all of a sudden you turn around and they're not even available, things that you might have wanted. So if you've got one of those old projects sitting around, get busy, do something with it. If you like this video or just want to share your thoughts about the car or your own car, maybe your own memories in the past, feel free to leave a message in the comments below. If you're a little late to understanding the Foxbody craze, it's not too hard to understand and grasp what makes these cars so popular, other than just the memories that many of us, now getting older, have fond memories and share with these things. These cars are not that big and they're not that heavy. With a little over 200 horsepower, a little over 300 foot-pounds of torque, these cars were peppy enough. With little modifications, they could be quite quick, quite fast, and still get 18 to 21, 22 miles per gallon cruising speeds back in the day. If you were one of those like me that had a hatchback for some time, there was plenty of room to pack a couple kids and luggage in the hatchback, or even work out of, and they were very practical cars.